Next, from Springfield, House Minority Leader Jim Durkin and Senate Minority Leader Christine Radogno react to the governor's State of the State address.
The governor made a very strong statement today on his vision for Illinois. And after today's speech, I don't think anyone could ever question his resolve to fix our broken state. When you have a divided government, which we have in Illinois, where we have a Republican in the mansion, we have two supermajority Democrats running the chamber, you get things done by compromising, by meeting halfway on the important issues of the day. And I think the governor made a very strong case of how he's willing to continue to work with the Democrats and meet them halfway on important priorities and issues for them. We know full well that the governor has stated long ago that he's willing to work with the Democrats on a budget, and he's willing to sign on to revenue. But he needs something in exchange. He's laid out that list over and over again. I've heard before that the governors from the Democrat leaders, that the governor's proposals go against the core beliefs of his party. Well, as this Republican stands here, it's called a tax increase, kind of goes against the core beliefs of the Republican Party. But we have a Republican governor who's willing to take that step and say, I'm willing to meet the Democrats to get this resolved. But we're not going to pass a tax increase, a budget that has a tax increase with no strings attached, which is what I continue to hear from the Democrats and what the Speaker just stated. So what I was also I thought was very good in what the governor stated today is in his continuation of trying to work with the Democrat majority is that he embraced the Democrat proposal for pension reform. I think it was a very bold move for the governor. Some people have stated in the past that it doesn't go far enough, or some people think it goes too far. But the fact is the Republican governor stated, I'm willing to work and I'm going to get behind that pension bill, as am I. He also stated, which I think is very important on behalf of a Republican governor, that he's willing to work with the Democrats on also a very important issue for them, and that is the funding inequalities of public education in Illinois, something which has been kind of a third-rail issue for decades. But the Republican governor has stated, I am ready to work with the Democrats on that issue, whether it's the city of Chicago, low poverty districts, and also rural districts. I'm prepared to work with him as well. And so, again, today's statement by the governor was very strong. It's a continuation of what he wants to do, which is to meet the Democrats halfway, negotiate on trying to fix the problems that we have, mainly resolving our budget impasse and also moving into the next budget cycle. So I stand ready to work with the governor and also my counterpart, Leader Radogno, to work with the Democrats to resolve the FY16 budget. We do that by meeting, and that's all I have to say for now.
Well, thank you. I think the speech speaks for itself. I found the tone fairly conciliatory, which I think is a good thing given the very charged environment we're in. But if you allow me for a minute, I'd like to address some of what Speaker Madigan said. He found a number of things about this speech interesting. I found a number of things about his response interesting. First of all, he brought in a number of people who are affected by this budget impasse. We all understand there are real consequences for this budget impasse. But what he did say, too, is that he's had some successes, but those successes, the budget fix in 15, criminal justice reform, he had a couple of others, were all successes because they didn't deal with fundamental change, the turnaround agenda, the things that the governor is asking for. I thought it was interesting that he talked about the governor wanting to depress wages of the middle class and send people to the emergency room and into welfare. I didn't hear the governor say that. I heard the governor talk about balancing the public sector and the private sector. Those are out of balance right now. I heard the governor talking about trying to make Illinois competitive, particularly in the area of workers' comp. And I don't know where, I never heard the word emergency room and pushing people into welfare. So that was quite interesting to me. The speaker also said that he passed an unbalanced budget, and he did. He said he readily admitted that, and he's willing to work on revenue options. That's great. I didn't hear one word about being willing to come together to talk about the things that the governor's talked about in terms of long-term reform for this state. So while the speech was very conciliatory, and certainly the speaker's words were measured as usual, what I saw once again is a brick wall. I'm willing to do it as long as it doesn't impact the status quo and the people that keep me in office whatsoever. So I think that we'll see how this unfolds. I'm pleased to hear about the potential discussion on pension reform, but I'll be quite interested to see where that goes.
Senator Radogno, you may have heard the speaker mention that he was saying the House brought up, and Jim, you maybe want, the House brought up property tax some X number of times on a vote, and you guys didn't vote for it.
Terry, that was all about politics. That's gotcha votes for political mailers next year. They were never intended to pass. He knew it. He continued, so he's going to put a press release out that Representative so-and-so voted against property taxes so many times. I've already seen it. That had nothing to do with substance about moving the ball forward and solving the budget. This was just about politics this summer. It was gotcha politics and nothing more than that.
And remember, the point of a property tax freeze is not a freeze for the sake of the freeze, but a freeze giving local governments the tools to be able to conduct their business at less expense to the taxpayers. He never included those items in those votes.
Senator, can you go beyond a little bit of saying what you're saying? Speaker Madigan talking about certain things that have happened, governor laying down his demands. Why is that interesting?
Well, it's interesting to me because I think the message from the speaker is crystal clear. He's willing to talk about things as long as he doesn't have to make any fundamental changes to the status quo. And that's what the governor is asking for. That's what the speech was about today. And as long as those areas don't impact the people that fund and keep one party in control and have got us in the position that we're in, he's fine with it. But he will not touch any area that may make a positive difference for the vast majority of the people of the state of Illinois if it entails really going to the heart of their constituencies.
So as it stands today, are you more or less encouraged, discouraged? I mean, it seems as if you're saying the governor got out there, tried to be more conciliatory, seek middle ground, and then you just heard Madigan.
Let me just say briefly, I think the governor coming out and stating that I am ready to get behind the Democrat president's pension reform bill is a pretty bold statement about how he is looking to find a resolve on issues that are very difficult. And I will tell you, that's not a bill that I think that the governor a year ago would embrace, but in the spirit of cooperation and moving the ball forward, that's a very important issue, which he's taken a very dramatic position on, something that's extremely important, but I think that sends a message that this governor is willing to work with the Democrat leaders on probably, that is not, if not the second most important issue that's facing the state of Illinois. But let me just make it perfectly clear. I hear this whole issue about that the governor is seeking to depress the wages and to hurt the middle class. I will say this, for the past 13 years, there's been no Republican who's been in the mansion or has run either chamber. I don't think the middle class was treated very well under the Democrat one-party rule for the past 13 years. This governor talked about increasing wages for the blue-collar workers, not the opposite. I heard the opposite from the speaker. It's not true. So the fact is, they got to stop playing the victim. They put us in this position. They sent that ridiculous budget to the governor, and I applaud the governor for vetoing it because it's an affront upon every Illinoisan.
The governor did talk about state workers make like 30% more than their counterparts in the private sector. You take that as saying that they make too much, or what does that mean?
I don't take that as saying they make too much, but I take that as saying that we need a balance between the people who are paying the state workers and the people who are working in the private sector to make those payments. But if you don't agree that, perhaps there's a difference with the public and private sector, look at other states around us. We have the highest state-paid workers in the entire nation when controlled for inflation. Even without, or rather cost of living, even without that control, we have the third highest paid. So again, it's a matter of balance, it's a matter of equity. Taxpayers cannot continue to give more and more and more and more to advantage a large, but not the majority of the people in this state. There's way more to the middle class.
Well, it seems like we heard about, and you folks are talking about President Clinton and the governor in some kind of a, if not an alliance, a lot of agreement, and there's one guy, Speaker Madigan, who's kind of left out. I mean, am I right?
No, the water's warm. He can jump in any time. And you know what? I encourage him to. The governor has been working with the speaker on, I think, two issues I'm up with in the last few weeks, school funding and also pensions. That's with the president. Speaker, I would just encourage him to get engaged with the governor, speak about those issues. We can talk globally. We can talk about the individual issues, about pension reform, about school funding. But I know those are issues that are important for his members. But again, I can't speak for Mr. Madigan. But when the Democrat president of the Senate is willing to go out and make public statements and say that I'm willing to work with this governor, I'd like to hear more of that from the speaker. That's how we resolve the budget.
I just also want to be careful that we don't overstate the amount of agreement we have. I do give President Cullerton credit for sticking with a potential agreement on pensions despite some miscommunications last week. I do think that he has an interest, and many members in his caucus truly do have an interest in moving the ball forward. We are not there yet, but my hope is that if we can successfully get an agreement on one of these large items, it will pave the way for other agreements.
The door's been open.
On education funding, do you take the governor's words today as an endorsement of the type of plan that's been proposed by President Cullerton and by Senator Benar and that sort of idea of funding?
I do not. I mean, that particular plan, as you're aware, really devastated one area of the state. We cannot help some areas at the expense of others. I know the governor's goal is to be able to add money to education the way we did in '97, so that there are some hold harmless bottoms-up approach. That will be tricky in the environment that we're in, but I think everyone would like to see an approach like that. And we're willing to work on that with him.
When was the last time there was a meeting between you guys and your counterparts in the Democratic side?
Well, four of us met about a month ago.
Yeah.
And not five. But,
Speaker was not there.
Speaker wasn't present, but before that, there were 2 meetings in December, we haven't met.
But let's be clear, getting 5 people in a room and having a productive meeting are 2 entirely different things. And so I think any way that we can get engagement, whether everybody's sitting in the room or it's through intermediaries or if it's with using staff, is a positive.
Our staff communicates on a daily basis with the majority staff on a variety of issues, so there's no lack of communication. Our staff, both House and the Senate Republican staff, are in a continuous discussion with the Senate staff on a variety of issues that are directives coming from us and also from the governor.
You know, the governor didn't address really the budget head-on. Obviously, I know a budget address is coming up,
Right.
but with service providers shutting down and such, I don't know, is that a miss that he didn't directly address the impasse situation, not the side programs, but where we're at right now?
No, we're going to be back here in 2 weeks, and I'll give the man his opportunity, governor, his opportunity at that time to talk about where we're at with the budget and also the impasse. I think it was, today is the state of the state. It's not the state of the budget.
Jim, have you had any conversations that you want to talk about with Representative Duncan as far as leaving the Democratic Party and joining your?
No.
Well, let's say that the situation we're in Illinois isn't very good. The year hasn't been very good. I bet a lot of people would agree with that, so let's start from there. Why would someone who thinks that believe that 2016 is going to be any better or any different?
You know, I'm about the now, about getting this done right now. I'm not going to speculate about what happens in 17. If the Democrats want to play the same game and pass a budget for the 3rd year in a row, which is grossly unbalanced, then do it at their peril. And you know what? Fine, we'll go through a summer session again, and we'll go through a fall session. But I am not going to put my members on an unbalanced budget. I am not going to put my members on a tax increase that comes with no strings attached, which they're asking for. But the fact is, let's get the job done for this right now. Just go back in time a little bit to last spring on the FY15 fix. We didn't create the mess, they created it. The governor inherited a large unbalanced budget. We worked collectively, mainly with Republican votes out of both House and the Senate, to fix the mess that was created the year before by the Democrats. So we can do this again. And you know what? But if we have to go in FY17 under the same path in the same way in which they did last year, so be it. But we're not going to support it. And I would encourage the governor again, if he's given that same type of bad budget, to veto it outright.
Leader Durkin, you know, the Democrats
Could
have
President-
this
Leader
giant.
Radogno respond to it? Could Leader Radogno respond to that question too, please?
Sure.
Is this year going to be any different or any better?
Well, I hope it's a lot better, but the fact of the matter is people in the state of Illinois, as they see the uncertainty unfold, are simply throwing up their hands and leaving. There's a lot at stake. Again, the invitation here is to the Democrats, Madigan in particular, to realize that the only way this is going to turn around is if he engages. Apparently, I think Cullerton has seen the wisdom of doing that, at least to some degree, and again, I don't want to overstate it, but I think that's a hopeful sign, and I think there is more common ground than Madigan portrays.
Well, for either of you, President Cullerton said in his speech the other day in Chicago, we're never going to do this stuff on collective bargaining, so the main parts of the turnaround agenda are not going to happen. They have a overwhelming majority of Democrats. So, and the governor really stressed that more last primary instead of general election. What happens? Are you willing, if Madigan doesn't give in on those things, or if Cullerton doesn't give in on those things, to have no budget for the rest of the year, or for 4 years?
My attitude is one step at a time, and I think that there may be some wiggle room on some of the collective bargaining issues, more than they say publicly, in order to keep their constituencies in line. So again, we need not necessarily 5 people in a room with some real engagement and discussion about what that would mean, how it would move the state forward, and still be fair to union and non-union members.
Could either of you respond to some people criticizing the governor, saying it wasn't his fault that Illinois was in a bad shape, but they're criticizing him, saying he's trying to do everything in 1 year, that he ought to be trying to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and acknowledge he has 4, maybe 8 in office.
Well, let's start what he did last year. He laid out his reform agenda. What he did is that he went to the legislative leaders stating that his intention to put together working groups, equal part Republicans and Democrats, to find some type of common ground on issues that he laid out in his first State of the State address. We believe that the Democrats were going to work in good faith, but by the middle of May, they just walked away from the negotiations. So there was never really a good faith effort. And at the same time, Republicans were not engaged at all with the budget that was prepared and it was passed by them at the end of May. So I think the governor is, whether he's going about it, you think, too heavy, but this is a man that I think wants to get things done. I don't think kicking the ball down the road, kicking the can down the road, which has happened for year in, year out, is an answer to our problem. So I give him credit for trying to resolve as much as he can. We're adults. We should get the job done. We can do more than just one issue at a time.
Thank you. There's like 2 more.
Chris, is this yours?